I am Excellent, and this is my channel. Today I'm going to bring to you some of the strangest unsolved mysteries of all time. So, settle in, grab some coffee or hot chocolate or whatever you'd like to imbibe, turn off the lights, and we will get started. But before we do, please click that like button. If you would like to share this channel with people who have like-minded interests, I would appreciate that as well. And if you'd like to be subscribed, please go ahead and do that. We're going to be giving a giveaway at 3,000 subscribers, and I think you're going to like it. All right, let's go. This one is about a sickening noise. In December of 2016, one CIA officer checked into the American Embassy's health office in Havana. He was suffering from nausea, headaches, and dizziness. 2 days later, 2 more CIA officers reported similar ailments. And by late 2018, the number grew to 26 Americans, 13 Canadians experiencing nausea, hearing loss, vertigo, nosebleeds, and focusing issues. In all the cases, victims claimed that the symptoms were triggered by a strange noise they had heard at their homes or in hotel rooms. One person described the noise as high-pitched. Another said that it was a beam of sound pointed into their room. Some insisted that the noise more closely resembled marbles rolling along the floor. The illness was confounding medical experts. The doctors at the University of Pennsylvania who examined some of these victims said that they were having concussion-like symptoms, but found no actual concussions. So, most everybody was thinking, probably what you're thinking, Cuba must have been doing it. The Cuban government was up to something. The Cubans vehemently denied that they were responsible, naturally, and many American investigators believed them. That's because they still don't know who or what made the victims sick. What is a new type of weapon, they thought. The CIA claims it doesn't know of any weaponry that could cause these symptoms. What about ultrasound? One theory holds that a pair of covert eavesdropping devices placed too close to each other by Cuban agents could possibly have inadvertently produced such a reaction, like the kind of feedback you hear when someone stands too close to a microphone. However, according to the FBI, they have found no evidence that substantiates that argument. In fact, ultrasound is above the range of human hearing. There were recordings captured in a couple of the victims' homes. However, that only added to the confusion, because 2 scientists who studied the recordings believed that what was captured on the recording was the sound of 2 male crickets. One of the scientists, Alexander Stubbs of the University of California, Berkeley, says that the insects are incredibly loud. You can hear them from inside a diesel truck going 40 miles an hour on the highway. Still, the scientists had no idea why the sounds might lead to illness in a human being. Then there were others who thought possibly it was just nerves. Cuba is a high-threat, high-stress post. Diplomats there are warned that there will be surveillance. There will be listening devices in your house, probably in your car. For some people, that puts them in a high-stress mentality, in a threat anticipation mode. Okay, well, that could be true, I suppose. But then explain what happened in China. Because in May of 2018, an American who was posted in the consulate was diagnosed with the very same mystery illness. Ultimately, 15 more Americans had to be evacuated because of this illness. While the seemingly airborne cause of these brain injuries is still a mystery, the fallout is very clear. The Americans removed 60% of their diplomats from Cuba and expelled 15 Cuban diplomats from Washington, D.C. The mysterious sounds may well be the opening shots of a new kind of Cold War. And, as of a couple of weeks ago, a little over 200 more people have come forward to say that they, too, have been targets of this sound and are now ill and experiencing a wide variety of these symptoms. So the investigation goes on. What are your thoughts about this? Is this a weapon of war? It kind of seems like it might be, right? But whose? That's the question. Next, this one is about living statues. From 1917 to 1928, 500,000 people were afflicted with a ghastly condition that could be part of the plotline right out of a horror film. The victims, very much alive and conscious, found themselves inexplicably frozen where they stood. Their static bodies, prisons for their working minds. This is referred to as encephalitis lethargica, or EL, aka the sleeping sickness. It first appeared in Europe and quickly spread around the world, reaching epidemic levels in North America, Europe, and India by 1919. And by then, about a third of those stricken with this illness died. Of the survivors, nearly half eventually found themselves unable to physically interact with the world around them, all of the while fully aware of their surroundings, completely awake, but unable to communicate. Though occasionally they were capable of limited speech, eye motion. Sometimes they could laugh. They generally appeared as living statues, completely motionless for hours, days, weeks, or years. The cause is still unknown, but one theory is brain inflammation triggered by a rare strain of Streptococcus, the bacteria responsible for many sore throats every year. Science's best guess is that the bacteria mutated, provoking the immune system to attack the brain, leaving the victim completely helpless. But none of that explains why the illness disappeared only to resurface sporadically, be it in Europe in the 1950s or in China 10 years ago when a 12-year-old girl was hospitalized for 5 weeks with the disease. Are such occurrences the new normal? Or are they signs that EL could be planning something bigger any day? A 2004 analysis of 20 patients with symptoms remarkably similar to EL concluded that whatever ailed them is still prevalent. As such, history's so-called sleeping sickness remains the stuff that nightmares are made out of and could be the next pandemic. And now, the roaming ruins. It's not unusual to find junk in Brazil's Guanabara Bay. I hope I said that right. But what Robert Marks unearthed there in 1982 was an unusual kind of foreign matter. In an underwater field the size of 3 tennis courts located 15 miles from shore lay the remains of some 200 Roman ceramic jars. A few of those were fully intact. According to Marks, a professional treasure hunter, the jars appeared to be a twin-handled type, which were used to transport goods like grains and wine in the 3rd century. But how did they get there? The first Europeans didn't reach Brazil until 1500. The Romans, who traded primarily in the Mediterranean port cities in the Middle East, had very little incentive to invest in ships that could cross the ocean. However, they did sail as far as India. Perhaps some untrained navigator lost his way in a storm, or maybe mutineers steered the ship westward. We may never know, nor are we likely to uncover more evidence, because Brazil closed the Bay of Jars to further research it in 1983 in an effort to deter looters. Marx claims that the government didn't want the area explored because finding Roman area artifacts there would mean that, contrary to Brazil's official history, the Portuguese were not the first Europeans to reach that country, and the truth Well, it's resting 100 feet under the sea. What is the Thevoynich Manuscript? The Thevoynich Manuscript is roughly a 250-page book written in an entirely unknown language or writing system. It's been carbon dated back to the 1400s, and it includes illustrations of plants that do not resemble any known living species. It's named for the Polish book dealer who purchased it in 1912. It is believed to have been intended as a medical text. Its first confirmed owner was George Bareszcz in 1585 through 1662. He was an alchemist from Prague who discovered it, taking up space uselessly in his library. Bareszcz tried to investigate the manuscript's origins, but he had no luck. The manuscript changed hands for centuries until it was purchased by Voynich, who posited that it was authored by Albertus Magnus, an alchemist, or Roger Bacon, an early scientist. However, some believe that Voynich fabricated the manuscript and its history all by himself. Various other hoaxes have been proposed over the years. Of course, that would not explain the carbon dating of the paper and the ink. Centuries after its first alleged discovery, the Voynich manuscript remains as impenetrable and inexplicable as ever. And next, today nearly 25% of Americans believe in reincarnation, although scientists tend to poo-poo the possibility, even while once in a while an unsolved mystery comes around that is so compelling and otherwise unexplainable that it gives even scientists pause. That is what we have in the story of the Pollock sisters. In 1957, two young English sisters, Joanna Pollock, who was 11 years old, and Jacqueline Pollock, who was 6, died in a tragic car accident. 1 year later, their mother gave birth to twins, Jillian and Jennifer. When the twins were old enough to talk, they began identifying and requesting toys that had belonged to their dead sisters, pointing out landmarks that only their dead sisters would have known, such as a school they'd attended, and sometimes panicking upon seeing cars idling. "The car is coming to get us," they reportedly shrieked on occasion. After the twins turned 5, these incidents became less frequent, and the girls went on to lead normal lives. Still, the story of the Pollock sisters made its way to Dr. Ian Stevenson, who was alive from 1918 to 2007. He was a psychologist who studied reincarnation. After studying thousands of supposed cases, Dr. Stevenson wrote a book telling of 14 that he believed to have been real, including that of the Pollock sisters. And finally, the bridge at Overtune that calls dogs to their maker. The Overtune Bridge near Dumbarton seems to call dogs to leap to their death. It is a perfect spot for unsolved mysteries. And since the early 1960s, around 50 dogs have perished and hundreds more have jumped but survived. Many of those returned for a second shot at jumping off again onto the jagged rocks 50 feet below. The Scottish Society for the Prevention of Cruelty of Animals has sent representatives to investigate, but to no avail. In terms of scientific truth, it is debatable, if not incredibly unlikely, that dogs are capable of forming an intent to die. Yet something is luring dogs off that bridge, often from the very same spot, and it's always on sunny, dry days. Many theories have arisen, including that the bridge is haunted. This was a popular theory after a local man threw his baby to his death from the bridge in 1994. A mink is marking the area with an almost irresistible scent, and a sound anomaly exists at the bridge that only dogs can hear. Whatever is causing this phenomenon, dog owners would be wise to take heed and keep their dogs on leashes. My personal opinion is just stay away from the bridge. That seems to be good for everybody. Thank you for coming today. I hope this was interesting to you. If you would, please, again, go ahead and click that thumbs up. And I appreciate you coming. Good night.